This
Because we-
conference will now be recorded.
Right, because Frank resigned.
Have they reconfigured the zoning committee yet?
No, we could not do that yet because I did publish in the newspaper. That's considered a text amendment to the zoning
Okay,
ordinance.
so it's still 7.
It's still 7, but we only have 6, because we have one that resigned.
Right.
Just like for the board, normally, I mean, we've got 6 trustees and a village president, but there was a period of time when we didn't have trustees, so we had 5 plus 1.
Or can you still have, if there's supposed to be 7 on the board, then you would need 4, right? For your quorum.
For your quorum, see, and I think it's different that if you are supposed to have 7, if you have 7, then 4 would be the quorum. But if you don't have 7, you're thinking that you're never gonna have a quorum then unless you have 4.
Right,
Right.
or 7. Now,
Yes.
I still think that we could have a meeting. I know that you and Frank were saying that one law firm, I've got to read myself the Open Meetings Act, because I would still think that we've got it scheduled. We should be able to talk. It doesn't make sense to me that we could talk as individuals, but not board members, because as individuals, we can't get together and discuss this business anyway. Because we're in our board member hats. So that goes along with, we would have minutes or not, because I don't know how you open a meeting if you don't have a quorum. So we'll go ahead and open it, and then I guess I'll still discuss it a little bit, because it doesn't make sense to me to open a meeting, call a roll, say there's no quorum, then close it.
Well, but you have to open the meeting to determine whether or not you have a quorum. I realize you look around and you can determine,
Right.
but I mean, to be official, call the meeting to order, you take the roll, and then you determine whether or not you have a quorum.
Okay, and that's why I think you can still have a meeting, even if there's only the 2 people. They're having a meeting, you just can't conduct business. But
You can't take an official vote.
no, you can't take an official vote, but it's whether or not it's actual a meeting and there's minutes taken and stuff. So that's what we're talking about. There's a difference of opinion on that right now. But let's go ahead and open it up.
It's
Oh,
recorded.
so we are open?
Yeah.
Okay, if you would take the roll then.
Yes. Booker, Emmert,
Here.
Comey,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Pitney.
Okay.
Mr. McDougal?
No, yes. Let the record show that we do not have a quorum, so we cannot conduct any official business. But I still think that we can discuss zoning issues, we just can't vote on it. I believe council's
I don't think so.
not thinking that. I don't know that we are in violation of Open Meetings Act. I'm gonna have to look that up. I think that the intent of the Open Meetings Act would be to give the public notice that you're meeting so they know what's going on. And we gave notice, this is a regularly scheduled meeting. So I think it's more in line with the Open Meetings Act. So I guess I'll take that risk by proceeding.
And I'll just go on record to say that at least from what I've seen, although there isn't something that definitively answers that, that it seems to appear that once you determine that there is no quorum, that you basically close the meeting because you have no quorum. That you cannot do anything at that point in time. And not run afoul of the Open Meetings Act.
Okay,
I understand your position, but
okay, that's fine, and I appreciate your counsel on it. I'm gonna take, like I said, his risk. He moved out of town, so when his term was up in May and he was moving out to his father's farm. The father wanted that in exchange for the father going to an assisted care facility. So it's out of the village, he could no longer be, so he did not renew his term. And I'm sorry, your name again?
Brian Martin.
Brian Martin. So Brian has now been appointed by the board and everything.
Right.
Okay, do you have a copy of the UDO?
Right.
Okay, you have that. Did you give him the document that I had drafted? Kelly, did you give him the
Oh, the
document?
tasks,
The task,
I have-
the zoning, the solar issues?
I have not.
Okay, I would like you to
Yeah.
give him that in case this group is still going to be considering those things. Mary, do you know, has the village board split up the planning commission from the zoning?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, in the past, this group had been looking at planning issues. The main thing we're looking at right now is a solar energy ordinance. The village president was thinking it might be best to have this just be a zoning committee and then there'd be a separate planning committee. I don't know if they're planning on the same people being on each or not. Right now in the UDO, there's some inconsistencies where it refers to, Mary, correct me if I'm wrong if you would, refers to a zoning commission or committee. It refers to a planning commission or committee, and then it talks about a zoning board of appeals.
Yeah, planning, zoning board, planning and zoning commission, and then zoning board of appeals.
Okay. If you had time to look at the ordinance to be able to tell us what our functions are as a zoning committee versus a zoning board of appeals?
I have not, I don't think it's real clear in there. What I was working on though is just starting from scratch, so to speak.
Okay.
And I don't have it here tonight because I was working on it, but the part I started, I forgot, honestly. But to put forth, because I think that's what we need to do. We need to look at what are the definitions of the zoning board of appeals, not necessarily ours, but out there. What's the zoning board of appeals and what's the zoning planning commission? And then how do we feel we fit into those definitions and how does that marry up with our UDO? Because this came up when we were doing the UDO that I brought up that I thought that it was very goofy, so to speak, because they're just used interchangeably and it just doesn't make sense. There was one thing, I think I brought, it was just, where? It's only one piece of paper. Thought I threw it in here, but I just thought, and again, this was nothing real official. This was just, maybe I did, something that I Googled. I thought that a planning board is a local government body that is responsible for making recommendations on land use, development, and zoning. They typically review development proposals, consider public input, and make recommendations to the governing body. A zoning board, on the other hand, is a local government body that is responsible for enforcing local zoning laws and regulations. They typically hear appeals from property owners and developers who disagree with the decisions made by the planning board or the local government. They also hear requests for variances from the zoning laws and regulations. In summary, a planning board makes recommendations on land use, development, and zoning, while a zoning board enforces local zoning laws and regulations.
How does the zoning board do that? I mean, is it like an administrative review? The ordinances are forced through an administrative process and then we're part of an administrative review before it goes to court on an official administrative review?
That's what this makes it sound like. Now, this is not what we have ever done.
Correct.
So I'm not saying this is gospel. I just Googled to say, what's the difference between, a zoning and planning commission and a zone, and the zoning board of appeals.
Okay, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is to try to get you up to speed on where we're at. We have various issues out there, this being one, and if we split, I don't know if there's gonna be 3 different committees, or we're gonna be, the people on this committee is gonna be on each of those committees, but we'll just be wearing different hats, or there'll be different people. Those are things I think that need to be straightened out, because historically, we had been doing all of those things, but we had not been doing any appeals. So that's in the works right now. Mary, I'm assuming, will give her opinion to the board, and then the village board's gonna have to decide how they want this to operate, and then make the UDO state how they want it to operate. We do have various issues in this UDO, which I believe there's a lot of inconsistencies. The plan that we had made a few months ago was, once we got done with the zoning ordinance, because the solar energy ordinance, because that was a hot topic, then we were gonna get into this UDO and try to go chapter by chapter or whatever over the course of a year or so, try to get rid of, identify the inconsistencies, and then make recommendations to the board, village board, as to what we should do, or what they should do with those inconsistencies, to try to get this straightened out. So that's another thing that's in the hopper for us, but we've been putting off because we have not finished the solar ordinance. The solar ordinance really hasn't gone very far. Herb, since you were here, is we've been not having a quorum. And plus then we knew that we were probably going to go down to 5 instead of 7. And I thought any new members should be able to get brought up to speed, so they would be able to have legitimate thought out input into the solar ordinance. Now, I guess we're kind of waiting to see, would we be giving the input, or will a planning commission do it? And is a planning commission different than us? So those are really the issues of where we're at right now, and really nothing we can do. The other things on the agenda, I don't really think we can take any, I know we can't take any action. I'm just gonna suggest to Mary, if she hasn't heard, Casper, what's his
I
name?
sent it to you.
Right,
Yes,
what's-
Manheim.
Manheim.
And he talked to the people who wanted the variance for the garage.
Mhm.
And in the UDO, there's a definition of garage height. And if it's a gable roof, then the height of the garage, for the purposes of our ordinance, is halfway between the eaves and the peak. So when it says you can't be over 20 feet, that 20 feet would be halfway. So the peak can be over 20 feet. That's his interpretation of it. I'd ask to see if he could be here by phone tonight, but he couldn't. It seems that that would be high enough for the people to put the garage they want to. They want to have a taller garage door so they can drive their work van in there. Since the building official says what they want to do, once they give them the drawings, meet our building and zoning regulations, there's no need for a variance, so there's no need for you to publish and expend the money to set a public hearing for the variance.
Yeah, Kelly had told me that what Casper had come up with and gave me a copy as well.
And then I
so.
believe I forwarded his text message to both of you this afternoon too.
Yeah, I did receive that.
Yep.
So that was the other thing we were gonna do tonight, is get a date and time for that public hearing, but we don't need to set that right now.
Right.
Uh,
We still have pending the issue, as is indicated on here, for the and I know we can't do it, but the recommendation of the zoning classification for 1515 South
Right.
Meridian Lawn Care by Walter.
Yeah, I'm just thinking more the bigger issues that I could discuss without violating, in my mind, the Open Meetings Act, 'cause I know I can't take any, action on those things. Mike Booker had told me that you had thought earlier that you could possibly be on the zoning committee, but then Monday nights might be bad for you, and so then you said you
No.
couldn't do it, is that true?
No, my work schedule varies. So like, I work 7 out of 14 days, 6 AM to 6 PM. And
Okay,
it rotates every week. Like this week, I work Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Next week, I only work Wednesday, Thursday.
so you hit all 5 days, or all
I
4
hit all
days?
7 days of the week within a 2-week time span.
Okay, because what I was thinking is, these are set, we used to meet at 7 o'clock because of my work schedule. I couldn't get here at 6 o'clock, but since I retired, we started meeting at 6. I believe that Herb is gonna be like me, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, there's probably not a big difference. And I don't think there is with Mike, and I don't know about Riley, but my guess is there wasn't. So if you had one particular day that you couldn't do it, if Mondays was gonna not be good,
No, I'm open, I just need it in advance, that way if you're gonna keep the meetings at 6 o'clock, like today, I took a little bit of time, PTO, and left work early.
what time would we have to have these meetings to not cause you a problem?
I can't guarantee because I'm a police officer, so if a call comes in at 5:45 and I'm supposed to be off at 6, I
Okay.
can't leave at 6, so.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out a way, if we could all agree to have a more accommodating date and time, because we used to meet as needed.
Yeah.
I did not like that because of my job. I was better off having a regularly scheduled meeting, so you knew that we're gonna meet the fourth Monday of each month. And if we didn't have anything to do, we just canceled the meeting, as opposed to getting a phone call saying, are you available on Tuesday next week?
No,
That was, so that's how we used to do it, and that's why we've got the regularly scheduled meetings. If there's a way that would help you, I'm glad to talk about it at a different meeting. We'd have to have the full
Right.
quorum to decide if we want to change our dates, but it's something I want to throw out there in case it might help.
just keep, as long as we have it scheduled and I know in advance, I'll know what my work schedule is.
Okay,
And I can
so you're better off having scheduled in advance
schedule in
meetings.
advance, yeah.
And 6 o'clock versus 7 is not
Doesn't make a
really
difference
going
to
to
me.
do anything. And what I'm saying, you're flexible like I am,
I'm flexible, but I agree that I like
the regular
a
schedule.
regular schedule, good to know that, oh yeah, Monday night's gonna be,
Okay, I think I've covered everything except for the alleys and such. We can bring those up. What I'm talking about the alleys is, when we look at the village map, it's got a number of alleys on it. Have some of them been vacated or not? We've got a property over here where the Hubbard's property used to be. There was a house over here. Our map shows an alley, but there is no alley there. And if the alley went through, it'd probably be hitting that building there. So was it vacated? Then we started looking at, how many of the alleys in town actually are alleys? And have they been vacated or should they have been vacated? And that's something that we were gonna get into to make a recommendation to the village board. And I think Kelly's looking at that. And there's also, I guess, some inconsistency between Wingest, you know what that is?
Yes.
Versus our map, and trying to figure out what it is, because like Wingest has that property over there, where the house was, as residential. We have it as business on our map. The son of the owner wanted to have the zoning changed because he thought it'd be more valuable as business. So we were gonna go that way, and then we saw that we had it as business. Why does Wingest have it as residential? Who's right? So we need to get back and find some documentation to show what it really is. And I think that Kelly's looking into that, and I don't know if Mary is.
Well, I had consulted with the village engineer over that because they're the ones who do the updated maps over the years. But unfortunately, what I got was the indication, well, that's what the map from then shows. But that doesn't help me because I need the document to show what did they have at the time that made them put it on the map for that.
Or
So-
if there's
So we know
minutes
legally
of a
what it
meeting
is.
or something like that that says they've changed the zone.
And that could be back in the 60s.
Yeah,
50s. So those are really the issues that we have been considering and we're planning on considering going forward. So at least you're up to speed now as to the issues, and you've got the UDO, so you can go through and read that at your own leisure if you want to. And I think you'll see the inconsistencies if you start looking at it a little bit more in detail. And just gives you an idea of where we're headed. And I don't know how much we're really gonna do on the zone, on the solar farm issue until we get straight, is it planning or us, and are we part of it? So I'm thinking that's kind of a little bit on a hold, but in case we're involved, that's why I wanted Kelly to give you, I drafted a couple of documents of my ideas and the issues we should be looking at, so that at least you can see that, and those are more of things to bring up discussion.
And then also, when he need a copy of what we've been circulating, which was the red line that had come,
Yes,
you know, there was a solar ordinance that I had taken from various places and just kind of threw the fruit basket, because I do that to try to bring up a lot of ideas, and then people say, no, we don't like that, and that's fine, but try to throw everything in there. The people from the solar company, their attorney had put in some red line comments naturally on what they would like. And so I think that's helpful too, because part of what you
I
comment on
refer
is
to
that.
I, at home, I don't know, I've got all that redlining capability like I used to have at work. So I just went ahead and referred to the section in the ordinance and gave my comments and commented towards what they were commenting, as opposed to just doing redline. Redline is good, so you can see everybody's comments right there, and you see them in red, green, or whatever. But I just didn't feel I had that capability on my computer at home, so I typed it up instead. But yeah, you would need that original document to understand what I was talking about and to see, it's a good starting point because we need to recommend to the village board what they should have for a solar energy ordinance. We've just been looking right now at the large generating facility as opposed to residential. But the village also needs to look at residential. They're gonna let it in on the ground, or does it have to be on the roofs? That type of thing. We have not put a lot of thought into that, and I don't think that Mary has done a rough draft of a residential.
I have not, because the ones from other municipalities pretty much combined them together, and I thought that was horrific. I mean, it was just too hard, I think, if you're talking somebody who's doing it at their home, they don't need 300 pages of this. That's an exaggeration, but, you know, they don't need 50 pages. Just give them the basics of what they need for their home.
Or what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
what you can do in a residential area versus what you can do in industrial or commercial.
Right, and where it should be, that's the main issue right now. And we have historically just given our recommendation to the village board, they're the ones that make the decision. So that is the hot topic we've been working on. Whether we'll continue, I guess, is to be seen.
And one thing, jumping back a second to the whole question of the alleys and did stuff get vacated. What I have, and Kelly, I'll have to look, because I did this a long time ago. When I had taken all of the village ordinances, hard copies that I had, assuming I had everything, but I know I didn't have maybe everything. And what I had done is I literally made folders with, these are the vacation ordinances. These are the zoning ordinances, you know, just to know what we had and what we didn't have, at least at that point. So I can move that up as well. I know we have them by now we've got them in a book or in terms of the names of them or whatever, but I just did it because in case something wasn't properly titled or whatever, I wanted to make sure that I had it. And this was stuff going back 1860 on.
And again, we just ran into it because of that property.
Yeah.
So we thought as a committee, it was a good thing for the village board should address it. And so that's kind of been our function of, if we see something that we thought should be addressed, we would pass a resolution and suggest it to them. And we'll see if that continues or not, if it goes into 3 different committees. Can you think of anything else to kind of bring up to speed, Mary?
I think, yeah, really, that's about it, what we zoning have going on. I think that's enough, don't you?
Just a little reading.
Okay, I guess we will close this meeting if it was a meeting, or we'll at least cease our discussions on zoning issues, which I guess the 3 of us could not discuss legally outside of a meeting under the Open Meetings Act, and that's why I think that this still would be legit, but I haven't run it as thoroughly as Mary. I know that I had made this same recommendation to county board committees a long time ago that they could discuss. I mean, they're already there. And it seems better than doing it here at a publicized time and date than at a party somewhere, which is totally, I understand, violating the Open Meetings Act, because nobody has notice of it. And the purpose of the Open Meetings Act is to give the public notice so they can hear what you're doing. And had they wanted to come today, they would have heard this. So I guess I'm just putting on the record in case somebody wants to cite me, the state's attorney. But I'm not worried about it, actually.
Well, and I always felt that same way that you did, until then Frank went back and he looked at something and he
But
said,
that's just the opinion of that one
I
firm.
understand it. And then I looked up, I did some research on it, and that's what they're basically coming back with, that's saying that, no, you really can't proceed, but they don't, I can't find like any case law
Right.
that says specifically, this is what happened. So that's what's troubling.
But what I read in the email that I thought came from that firm is they can't talk as committee members, but they can as citizens. Well, no. We can't talk as citizens because then we're violating open meetings when we're doing it at the party, we're doing it at the baseball game. Because we can't say,
Only 2 of you.
yeah, you can do it then. But
But
if that law firm was saying that we could continue to talk as private citizens, that's not right.
I don't know that it said, I don't have it in front of me, but I thought it was that they could listen as private citizens. So that if somebody came and we scheduled a public hearing and we didn't have a quorum, that's where the question came up. Can you at least hear the public comment if you don't have a quorum? And that the opinion was, no, not as an official committee, whatever you call yourselves, but that you could say to the people, look, if you want to talk to us, doesn't say we're going to say anything back, but if you, because we're not discussing any business, if you want to talk to us as individuals, you can tell us, but you're just going to have to do it all over again when you do it before an actual board. That's how I
Okay,
interpret it.
but-
Not that anybody here was going to talk
Okay,
individually or otherwise.
and I may have misconstrued what they were saying, but I'd have the same issue with that then, because we're sitting here as a board, it was noticed up as a board, and I'm gonna take off my zoning hat and put it on the floor and listen as a citizen, a private citizen. No, they're talking to me because I'm on this board.
I understand, but then you're not discussing any village business because you're not saying anything, you're just sitting there. Just a blob, sitting there, a person, sitting there, and they're talking to you, you're not making any response.
Okay,
So at least I think that's how they distinguish. Right.
but in any event, we'll worry about that later. I don't see it coming through, and I guess for my own edification, I'm gonna have to look into it a little bit more. But the village board's gonna have to make its own decisions on how it wants its board and its committees to run. So there is consistency, because part of the problem with this is, if in fact we could have a meeting, you just can't take any business, then any discussion or anything that happened, Kelly could be taking notes, and then somebody tries to find out what happened in a committee 3 years ago or 5 years ago. They're asking for the minutes, and she can say, here's what happened. And it might be, here's what happened, there wasn't a quorum, so nothing happened. But if there's no meeting, how do you have minutes? Is part of what I think Frank was saying, which doesn't make sense to me, because I like Kelly's idea. I think that there should be an official record of what happened for this meeting, which was regularly scheduled at the beginning of the year, or the beginning of sometime, the fiscal year or calendar year. An ordinance or a notice went out that this committee was gonna meet on these 11 days. So if somebody 5 years from now wants to find out what happened on some issue through the zoning commission, they're gonna ask for the minutes of all those. They know there was a scheduled meeting.
There could
But
still,
unless there's minutes, there's not gonna be,
there could still be an open record. The meeting was open, there was no quorum established,
Right.
and the meeting was immediately closed.
Right.
but to me, those are minutes too. And so there was an issue,
There's a record, that's a record of the meeting, yeah.
it's a record of the meeting. How's
And I think
that?
you have to have a record of the meeting. That's what was said by
The answer blank.
Ansel Blank, yeah.
And
And the records of the meeting, a record of the meeting is the minutes. I mean, in any event, those are the issues that are raised, and
do you,
I guess I'm explaining to you why we're having this discussion, but in fairness to you guys, and in fairness to Mary, I wanted to state why I felt we could still go ahead. Because I guess I'm putting you in harm's way a little bit, but.
and in
not
record,
worried about
record of the meeting that Kelly and I were talking about, okay, if you call it record of the meeting, if you don't, for whatever reason, don't wanna call it minutes. If you call it record of the meeting, then where are you going to put those? Are you gonna then have a catalog that's minutes and record of the meetings? Because otherwise, if you just have record of the meeting somewhere,
It's gonna get
then
lost.
10 years from now, when Bill says, somebody's gonna say,
They're
where
gonna-
are,
they're
where
gonna
are
FOIA
those
the
things?
minutes.
Yeah, they're gonna FOIA the minutes, but we don't have those.
I would still put them in with the minutes,
Yes.
That's what I would do.
in the same order. Even though it just says record of meeting, that there wasn't a quorum, there was no meeting.
And to me, that's just the minutes of the meeting. It's the same thing, it's just a different term.
And I think if you posted an agenda, you should have.
The agenda
There should be a
correspond.
record of what happened.
If I
And
have an
that-
agenda and no minutes, no record that
Right.
states what,
You don't know if they might or not
Yeah.
5 years from now.
it'd be different if that meeting was canceled prior to
Correct.
call to
Right,
order.
right.
Then you would have a canceled agenda.
Right.
But yeah, I believe you have to have the minutes
And
stated.
I think that's more in line with the Open Meetings Act and the intent. So,
That's why I wanted to see if I could find anything that was more definitive. While I have all the respect in the world for Ansel Blank, they're a law firm in Chicago that does municipal law, and they're like considered the gods of municipal law. But just because they do it a lot of times and they give their opinions, doesn't always mean they're going to be correct. Maybe 99% of the time they're correct, but I wanna know the why behind why they come to
Correct.
this conclusion.
and it could be a gray area. And if it's a gray area, like I said, I think it's more in line with the intent of the act. So,
I had actually reached out to Carrie Lynn,
Mm-hmm.
and she was getting ready to board a plane, and she was going to send out an email back to me, her opinion on the question, and she must have forgotten. So I might have to call again if we want her to respond to that.
I think that would at least be helpful to maybe if she could give us specifically, she's one of the partners there and she's always speaking on Open Meetings Act issues.
and if the village board wants to go that way and say they think it's a violation, or that's just how they want their meetings to be run, I will abide by how they want it done. But right now, I don't have any parameters like that, I think, in front of me, so that's why I felt I could do this, and I still thought it was best to bring you up to speed so that you kind of know what we're doing.
And obviously that's not the kind of thing that anybody's gonna probably ever challenge because we're not here making having a discussion over something that's
And plus, we're not
real
taking any
hot.
final action. So if the state's attorney was going to go ahead and cite me for it, I think I've got a great argument to him to not do it based upon it's more in line with the intent of the law, and then throw him in front of a judge. I think I'd have a decent shot.
Can you tell he's retired?
And if the board decides to make this a 5-member committee,
Yeah,
or,
well, it may or may not be easier to get a quorum.
Yeah.
I got a feeling it might be a little bit easier. And one reason I think we're going to 5 is the village is having trouble, in my opinion, finding people willing to serve on some of these committees. And aren't there still 2 openings on the village board that they're having trouble finding somebody to be on the village board? So this current day and age, it's better to have a smaller group because we don't want to keep canceling our meetings.
And it was similar circumstances at the library. We reduced the size of that board, same.
So you didn't have so many canceled meetings.
Yes.
So that's where we're at.
And on the village board, we're just one short, right?
Well,
Not 2.
technically 2, because we don't have Drew, he's gone, and
Right.
Mike really wants out.
Well, yeah, but he's still here.
He's still here, but he's waiting for some changes to happen, so he can get
Yeah,
off the board. Yeah.
got it.
So technically,
So I
we
guess
still
there's
need 2.
2 people that could join if they wanted to.
Right.
But there's only 1 opening.
Yeah, we got 1 opening and 1
But as soon
engaged.
as you find another person wanting to join, boom, he's gone. Okay.
How those retired people are.
Oh, you're jealous, huh?
I am. I'm on the record.
Okay, do you want to close the meeting, or I'm saying, I feel that if we didn't have a meeting, then you just make a record of it. I don't know if there's any formal
Yeah,
vote that needs to be taken to close it, because that's kind of an action.
right.
I would just put a record in of, here's what was it, there was no quorum, here's what was discussed, and they quit talking at 6:40.
6:40. Meeting closed?
Unless you have anything else you want to
No.
bring up, okay. Or,
I have a village question.
Okay.
is this a zoning type issue?
No.
Okay, so this is completely,
this is
He's
citizen to
asking
citizen.
as a citizen.
yeah,
Should I?
Yeah, then this
Yeah.
would not be recorded.